ocean is the last great unknown on Earth. Even with satellites and submarines, we've only mapped a small part of it, and the little we do know is enough to terrify even the bravest explorers. From glowing seas that stretch farther than the eye can see, to ghost ships that appear without a single soul on board, these stories are very real and prove the ocean is hiding more than we can imagine. Today we're diving into ocean anomalies that terrified explorers. You're looking at a map. You know exactly where the island should be, but when you arrive, it simply isn't there. That is what Spanish explorers discovered in the Gulf of Mexico. For centuries, maps showed an island called Bermeja just off the Yucatan coast. It was even considered important for oil drilling rights in the late 1990s, but when surveyors and naval teams went to find it, the island had vanished. Some believe Bermeja was destroyed by rising seas or an earthquake. Others think it never existed or was a cartographic mistake. But Mexican officials were so unsettled that conspiracy theories spread, suggesting the island might have been deliberately erased to change maritime boundaries. For the sailors who went looking, it was as if the sea had swallowed a whole piece of land. Imagine you sail for weeks to reach an island that everyone claims is there, and when you get there, it's just open ocean. This is the story of Doherty Island, reported in the extreme South Pacific. In 1851, Captain Doherty of the James Stewart claimed he saw a new island somewhere between Cape Horn and New Zealand. He described it as 5 to 6 miles long, with a high cliff, a bluff, to its northeast, snow on top. Later, other captains, Keats in 1860, Stannard in 1886, also reported seeing it at roughly similar coordinates. But here is the twist. No one ever landed on it. Later expeditions couldn't find any trace. By the early 20th century, it was more or less declared non-existent. The most likely explanation is fog banks or icebergs, optical illusions, maybe even navigational error. For those early sailors, though, believing land was in front of them only to find endless ocean would be devastating. The hopes of discovery turning into hopeless confusion terrified many who searched in those cold, cruel, lonely seas. Picture sailing at night and suddenly the water around you begins glowing bright blue as if it's on fire. Early explorers in Southeast Asia reported exactly that while passing through the Malacca Strait. This wasn't myth or exaggeration. It was a real natural phenomenon now known as bioluminescence. Massive blooms of tiny plankton release light when disturbed, creating entire seas that appear to glow. For sailors who didn't know the science, it was absolutely horrifying. Some wrote in their logs that the ocean looked alive and seemed to be chasing their ships. Today we understand it's a defensive mechanism of plankton, but to those early crews, fiery waters at night were a bad omen that left them speechless and afraid. In 2016, a team of explorers in the Solomon Islands stumbled across a phenomenon that seemed impossible. The ocean itself was boiling. The spot, called the Cavachi Submarine Volcano, is one of the most active underwater volcanoes in the Pacific. When it erupts, the water literally bubbles and churns with steam, ash, and boiling lava fragments. Divers and researchers described the area as terrifying. Not only were the waters hot and acidic, but large predators like sharks were spotted living inside the hostile crater. The idea of sharks thriving in boiling toxic waters baffled scientists and left explorers shaken. It proved the ocean can host life in places humans could never survive. What if part of the ocean's surface was tens of meters lower than everywhere else, not because there was a depression, but because gravity itself was weaker there? This anomaly was discovered in 1948 by Dutch geophysicist Felix Andreas Venning Mens during gravity surveys at sea. It's called the Indian Ocean Geoid Low. It's a massive circular region southwest of India's tip, covering about 3 million square kilometers, almost the size of India itself. Because gravity is slightly weaker there, if surface effects like tide and currents were removed, the sea level would be up to about 106 meters lower than the global average. Explorers and navigators in earlier times didn't know of this, but such a weird gravitational effects means that mapping, depth estimates, sea level expectations, all could be off. Even now, it makes scientists scratch their heads over Earth's interior. Where did this low-density region come from? Some recent studies suggest it's caused by fragments of ancient ocean floors, plus deep mantle dynamics.
Next up, let's talk about quantum entanglement. Quantum entanglement is one of the strangest concepts in physics. It's when two particles become linked in such a way that they behave like a single entity, no matter how far apart they are. If you measure one, its entangled partner instantly reacts. And this happens faster than the speed of light, which breaks our very simple understanding of how the universe works. In the case of quantum entanglement, information doesn't need to travel through space to have an effect. So what does this have to do with other realities, though? Well, one way to think about entanglement is to consider that before we measure a particle, it doesn't have a single fixed state, it has a set of possibilities. When we force a measurement, basically one possibility becomes the reality that we see, that we observe. Some physicists take that idea a step further. Every possible outcome actually happens, but in a different parallel universe. For example, particles have a property called spin, which is just a label for one of two states, spin up or spin down. So when you measure one particle and it becomes spin up, in our reality, another version of you in another universe measures the same particle and it becomes spin down. Entanglement then isn't just about two particles sending faster than light messages, it's a single event, the measurement, causing the universe itself to split into different branches, each containing a different outcome. This doesn't prove that parallel universes exist, but it does show how some of the strangest things in quantum physics can be interpreted in a way that points to realities other than our own. String theory is the idea that the basic building blocks of the universe aren't tiny dots like particles, but like vibrating strings of energy. The way a string vibrates determines what kind of particle it shows up as, like how a guitar string can make different notes depending on how it's played. For string theory to work though, there have to be more dimensions than the three we see around us. These extra dimensions are thought to be curled up so tightly that we can't see them. And the way those hidden dimensions are folded or shaped actually changes the rules of physics. Scientists call these shapes Calabi-Yau manifolds, but you can just think of them like different ways of folding origami. Each fold creates a different possible universe with its own set of physical laws. But put all those possibilities together, you don't get one universe, you get a whole bunch of potential universes. So why do we live in this particular one? Well, the idea is that only some universes have the right conditions for life. We just happen to be in the one that works, because if we weren't, we obviously wouldn't be here asking the question in the first place. And finally, we have the holographic multiverse. What in the hell is this? Well, back in the 70s, physicists realized something kind of cool. All the information about everything that falls into a black hole isn't stored inside it, but rather on its flat two-dimensional surface. And that got them wondering, if that's true for a black hole, could it be true for the entire universe? This is what led to the holographic principle. The idea is that our entire three-dimensional universe, with all its planets, the stars, galaxies, it might actually be a detailed projection of information from a flat 2D surface at the very edge of space. What we see and experience as reality is essentially a hologram, a kind of projection. Now, here's where the multiverse angle shows up. If our universe is just one possible projection, then maybe there are other ways to project that same information. Imagine, a single piece of paper with a drawing on it. You can shine a light through it in different ways to create different shadows or images. So maybe that single flat 2D layer of information at the edge of reality could be used to create an infinite number of different 3D projections. One of those projections is, of course, our universe with its specific laws of physics. Another projection could be a completely different universe with its own things going on. This is a pretty cool idea because it doesn't just guess that other universes exist. Instead, it's tying the idea of a multiverse to a real physical principle. We all know the universe is expanding. For a long time, the leading explanation has been something called dark energy, a mysterious force pushing space apart. It's a solid theory backed by observations, but no one has ever directly detected it. In a way, it's a placeholder for something we don't fully understand yet. But in late 2023, a team of scientists from the University of Copenhagen and the Tokyo Institute of Technology proposed a new idea. What if the universe isn't expanding because of a hidden energy, but because it's literally absorbing other universes? Imagine our universe as this huge growing blob. As it drifts through space, it bumps into smaller universes and swallows them. This process of merging and absorbing other universes would create that outward pressure that makes ours seem like it's just expanding. This could also give us a better, more accurate understanding of the Big Bang, when everything just rapidly inflated. Of course, there's a ton we don't know about the Big Bang, mainly what caused it, and it's just a theory anyway, but according to this new idea, our universe may have merged with an older, bigger one, which caused it to suddenly stretch out. The mathematical multiverse theory takes the idea of parallel worlds to an extreme. Instead of asking, what if there are other universes like ours, it asks, what if every possible mathematical structure exists and each one is a universe? This one is kind of a mind trip, but the idea is that math isn't just a language that we use to describe the universe. Math is the universe. Our entire reality, from atoms to galaxies, is just one solution out of infinite possible solutions to a mathematical system. That means every consistent mathematical framework, no matter how strange, has a universe attached to it. Some might look similar to ours, others could operate under completely alien rules. Now, what exactly do I mean by all this? Well, there could be a parallel world where gravity pushes instead of pulls. Time could run in loops instead of straight lines. Some universes might not have stable matter at all. This may sound strange, but what we're really saying here is that there's nothing particularly special about our version of math. We just happen to exist inside the one universe where things operate this way. As I mentioned before, we've thought for a long time that right after the Big Bang, the universe went through a burst of rapid inflation. Not a slow expansion, but an explosion that stretched space itself at an unimaginable speed. According to inflation theory, that process didn't happen evenly everywhere. Different regions expanded at different rates, creating bubbles of space-time. Each bubble can evolve with its own set of rules, its own matter, its own dimensions. That makes every bubble essentially a separate universe. Our universe, then, could just be one bubble among who knows how many others. Some bubbles may have expanded faster, some slower, and some may still be forming today. The inflation process doesn't end everywhere at once. It keeps happening in patches, so the multiverse could be infinite. In this model, other universes aren't far away in our space. They're sealed off, separated by expanding regions that we can never cross. Only possible evidence would be, if bubbles collided. A collision might leave a scar, visible signature in the background radiation of our universe, which leads straight to the next anomaly. The cosmic microwave background, or CMB, is the afterglow of the Big Bang. It's faint radiation spread across the sky. Scientists study it because it's like a baby photo of the universe. Normally, it should look random but smooth, except researchers have spotted some strange anomalies. In 2010, a team studying CMB data found some strange circular patterns. One interpretation of them was that these could be evidence of collisions, our universe bumping into another one. Then in 2015, Randir Chari at the European Space Agency took a closer look at the data, and he stripped away all the usual sources like stars, dust, gas. What was left behind should have been close to nothing. Instead, though, he found areas that were up to 4,500 times brighter than they should have been. His conclusion was that these bright patches might be imprints left from another universe colliding with ours, kind of like a bruise. Not everyone agrees with this interpretation, of course, but the fact is there are strange patches in the CMB that don't line up neatly with our standard model of cosmology. The simulation theory flips the question of reality on its head. Instead of imagining other universes existing, out in space, it suggests that we might be living inside a computer program. If an advanced civilization had the technology, they could simulate entire realities, complete with conscious beings who don't realize they're in a simulation, i.e. us. Inside, it would look and feel just like a real universe. And if that's true, that all of this is just a very advanced simulation on some alien being's computer, and it's very likely there wouldn't just be one simulation. There could be countless others running at the same time, each with different parameters, like different settings in a game. One simulation might have slightly stronger gravity, another might tweak the speed of light. What makes this unsettling is that it's not pure science fiction. Philosophers and physicists have pointed out that if simulations are possible, the odds of us living in the one, real universe are actually kind of slim. Far more likely that we're just inside one of the countless copies.
The Mayan calendar famously ended on December 21st, 2012, sparking worldwide fears of an apocalypse. While the end of the world didn't happen, what's real is that the Mayan system tracks time differently than ours. They use what's called the long count calendar, which operates on cycles far longer than years or centuries. Archaeologists now know December 2012 simply marked the end of one 5,125-year cycle and the beginning of another. But what's strange is how precisely the Mayans could align their timekeeping with astronomical events, far beyond what most ancient civilizations managed. Their calendar works almost flawlessly with modern astronomy, raising the question, how did they understand time so deeply thousands of years ago? In June 1980, residents of Catania, Sicily, started noticing something odd. Their clocks were running fast, not by hours, but by minutes, every day. Watches, alarm clocks, and even public systems all sped up. The anomaly lasted for days before disappearing without explanation. Italian scientists investigated and speculated it might have been electromagnetic interference, possibly from secret military equipment, but no solid cause was ever proven. For one eerie week, an entire city lived outside of normal time. In 1971, physicists Joseph Haffel and Richard Keating flew 4 atomic clocks around the world on commercial jets. When the clocks were compared to identical ones left on the ground, they were no longer synchronized. Clocks that flew eastward had lost time, while those that flew westward had gained it. The differences were tiny, just nanoseconds, but measurable and exactly what Einstein's theory predicted. The experiment was a breakthrough. Time itself isn't absolute. It bends and it shifts depending on speed and gravity. Reality isn't just one universal clock, it's billions of personal timelines all ticking at slightly different speeds. In 1582, when the Gregorian calendar was introduced, Catholic countries skipped ahead 10 days, but Russia refused to adopt it until 1918. By then, their calendar was 13 days out of sync with the rest of the world. For centuries, Russia literally lived in a different time than its neighbors. Historians point out this created confusion in diplomacy, trade, and even record keeping. In a very real sense, one of the largest nations on Earth was living in the wrong year compared to everyone else. In 2010, 33 miners in Chile were trapped underground for 69 days after a collapse at the San Jose mine. The world followed the rescue operation closely, but what many don't realize is that the men reported something even stranger than survival. They lost their sense of time. With no sunlight and only dim lamps, their internal clocks broke down. Some swore entire days had vanished. Others felt like one endless night stretched on forever. Psychologists later explained that without natural light cues, the human brain stops tracking 24-hour cycles. Time becomes much more elastic, stretching and collapsing in ways that feel impossible. When the men were finally rescued, many said they had no idea how long they had been down there. For them, the calendar outside didn't match the one that they experienced. It was proof that time isn't just physics, it's perception, and under the right conditions, even perception can collapse. Imagine if 300 years of history never happened. In the 1990s, German historian Hebert Illig proposed exactly that. He argued that the years between 1614 and 911 AD, the so-called Dark Ages, were largely fabricated. His evidence? Gaps in historical records, suspiciously few archaeological finds, and inconsistencies in the calendar introduced by Pope Gregory XIII in 1582. Illig believed powerful rulers, including Holy Roman Emperor Otto III, wanted to position themselves in the year 1000, so they simply invented the missing centuries. Mainstream historians reject the idea, pointing to evidence like tree ring data and astronomical events recorded during that time. Still, the fact that the theory can't be fully debunked leaves a chilling thought. What if parts of the past never even existed? In 2015, astronaut Scott Kelly spent nearly a year aboard the International Space Station, while his identical twin, Mark Kelly, stayed on Earth. When Scott returned in 2016, NASA compared the two. What they found was stunning. Scott's body had actually aged a tiny bit less than his brother's. This wasn't science fiction, it was relativity in action. Time itself moved differently for Scott, traveling at high speed in orbit. Even more bizarre, NASA discovered genetic changes. Scott's chromosomes showed altered telomere lengths, his gene expression was different, and his immune system had shifted. Some of the effects faded, but others remained permanent. The twin experiment proved two things. Time doesn't tick equally for everyone, and leaving Earth can make you biologically different. On June 30th, 2012, the world's official timekeepers added 1 extra second to atomic clocks to keep them in sync with Earth's rotation. Sounds simple, right? Well, wrong. The leap second caused chaos. Reddit, LinkedIn, and Qantas Airways all crashed. Some servers froze, others ran non-stop loops. The problem was that the computers don't like a day with 86,401 seconds instead of 86,400 seconds. To them, that second just shouldn't exist. Since 1972, leap seconds have been added 27 times. Each time, scientists basically have to patch up reality. It's proof that even Earth itself doesn't keep time perfect, and humans are constantly adjusting reality to match. When the Large Hadron Collider fired up in 2009, strange things happened. Just before a major experiment, a burst of liquid helium caused a shutdown. Days later, weird rumors spread. Two physicists had suggested that the Higgs boson might travel backward through time to sabotage its own discovery. While that sounds absolutely wild, what they really argued is that the equations of particle physics allow for time to flow in both directions, and something about the Higgs could cause effects that ripple backwards. Mainstream science never proved this, but the fact that respected physicists even published the idea shows how fragile our understanding of time really is. Calendars are supposed to keep time straight, but history shows they often don't. In 46 BC, Julius Caesar reformed the Roman calendar, creating the Julian system. To reset it, he declared what became known as the Year of Confusion, which lasted 445 days. Whole weeks were effectively invented to realign the seasons. People literally lived through extra time. Later in 1582, Pope Gregory XIII had to fix it again, which meant skipping 10 entire days. October 4th was followed immediately by October 15th. Imagine going to bed one night and waking up in a completely different week. Time, as humans live it, has always been flexible, and sometimes governments simply delete or invent days to make it fit.
Could be affected, which would mess with communication, GPS, and even power grids on Earth if a big solar storm hits at the wrong time. Out in the Indian Ocean, there's a strange spot called the Indian Ocean Geoid Low, or IOGL. It's basically a giant gravity hole covering about 3 million square kilometers, almost the size of India. Scientists first noticed it back in 1948 when a Dutch geophysicist measured gravity from a ship. So, what do I mean by gravity hole though? Well, gravity there is weaker than usual, which means if you could somehow smooth out the tides and currents, just make it all flat and glassy, the sea level in that specific area would actually be hundreds of feet lower than the global average. What's causing it? Well, one idea is that it has to do with plate tectonics. Millions of years ago, the land that is now India drifted away from Africa. Pieces of the old ocean floor in between sank down into the earth. Hot, lighter rock from deep inside the earth pushed up around these pieces, making that area less dense. Since lighter stuff pulls less, gravity there is weaker, which would be why this gravity hole exists. Out in the Central African Republic, right around its capital, Bangui, there's a huge, strange spot in Earth's magnetic field. See, normally Earth's magnetic field is like a smooth and visible shield surrounding the planet, protecting us from cosmic radiation. But over Bangui, this shield gets weird. The magnetic pull is weaker than it should be, and it doesn't line up like it does everywhere else. Scientists call this the Bangui magnetic anomaly, and it's one of the biggest and strongest weird spots in Africa. It's massive, about 700 by 1,000 kilometers. No one really knows why it's there. The underground rocks are ancient, billions of years old, and the crust around it is uneven, which might be part of the reason for the strange magnetic behavior. As for how it formed, there are two main ideas. One is that a huge blob of rock pushed up from deep under the earth, messing with the magnetic field above. The other is that a giant meteorite slammed into the area hundreds of millions of years ago. The impact would have smashed and rearranged the rocks below, possibly creating pockets of magnetic material that mess with the field above. Deep beneath northeastern China, way down in the mantle between about 700 and 1400 kilometers under the surface, scientists have found something strange called the Beijing anomaly. Basically, seismic waves, vibrations from earthquakes that normally travel through the earth, slow down a lot in this area, which is unusual. Researchers Jesse Lawrence and Michael Weissession think the reason might be water trapped deep in the mantle. Even a tiny amount of water down there, like a fraction of a percent, can really affect how these waves move, causing them to lose energy and slow down. The Beijing anomaly covers a huge area, so there must be a process spreading this water throughout the mantle. One idea is that water gets dragged deep into the earth by ocean floors as they slowly slide under the continents. The middle of these sinking slabs stays cool, so the water doesn't evaporate, even under extreme heat and pressure. And over time, some of that water seeps out into the surrounding mantle, making pockets that are wetter and softer than normal. Just the top layer of these sinking slabs is enough to explain all the weird seismic readings. Next up is the Kursk magnetic anomaly in southwestern Russia, near the Ukrainian border. This area is so magnetically charged that it messes with compasses. Some say it's like Earth's third magnetic pole. This is the largest magnetic anomaly on Earth. It spans nearly 50,000 square miles. It contains more than 30 billion tons of iron ore. Some estimates say it holds close to 50% of the Earth's total iron ore reserves. The magnetic weirdness is thanks to that iron ore. It's so magnetic that it distorts Earth's magnetic field above it. The Kursk magnetic anomaly was first discovered in 1773 by a Russian astronomer, but it wasn't until 1883 that the connection between the anomaly and the iron ore deposits was made. But if you're ever in the area though and your compass starts acting up, you'll know why. Under the North Sea, not far from Britain, lies a buried mystery called the Silver Pit Crater. It's about 20 kilometers across and looks a lot like a classic impact crater, which is why, when it was first noticed in seismic data, some scientists thought a meteorite had smashed into the seafloor millions of years ago. If it was a space rock, it would have been 120 meters or just under 400 feet wide. The crater was spotted by geologists Simon Stewart and Philip Allen, who noticed unusual rings in the seismic scans. Stewart thought it could be a meteor, and the idea quickly made headlines in 2002 as potentially the first confirmed impact near Britain. Beneath the Appalachian Mountains, there's something scientists call the Northern Appalachian Anomaly, but most people just call it the Blob. It's basically a massive pocket of super hot rock sitting about 125 miles under New England and stretching more than 200 miles across. What's weird is that there hasn't been much geological activity in the Appalachians for nearly 200 million years. So the fact that this blob is even there never really made sense. For years, scientists thought it was leftover heat from when North America split from Africa, but new research shows that's not true. Instead, it looks like the blob actually formed about 80 million years ago, when Greenland separated from North America. When continents split, the Earth's mantle pushes upward to fill the gaps, creating waves of hot rock called mantle waves. This one's been slowly drifting southwest, about 12 miles every million years. And it's still moving today. The blob might even be the reason the Appalachians are still standing tall, even after millions of years of erosion. That heat underneath can make the crust lighter and cause uplift, almost like a hot air balloon rising. And for those living in New York, prepare yourselves, because the Appalachian blob is on track to reach you in about 10 to 15 million years. Up in Canada's Yukon, there's a fault line called the Tintina Fault, and scientists think it could be a ticking time bomb. It runs for about 620 miles, stretching into Alaska. Now, it's been quiet for about 12,000 years, and that might sound reassuring, but that usually just means stress has been building up, waiting for the right moment to snap. Researchers recently focused on a 130-kilometer stretch near Dawson City, a small town of around 1,600 people. With satellite scans, LiDAR, and drone maps, they spotted huge scars in the land that show this fault has ripped apart before. One spot showed the ground had shifted more than 3,000 feet, the sign of a long chain of powerful quakes millions of years back. Another break in the ground pointed to big earthquakes about 132,000 years ago, but for the last 12,000 years, nothing, which means all that energy has just been sitting there. The team says the fault is moving less than a millimeter a year, but over thousands of years, that adds up. If it goes, it could unleash a quake over magnitude 7.5. That's the same level as Haiti in 2010 or China's Tangshan quake in 1976. Even though the Yukon is way less populated, something that size could still wreck highways, mines, and set off massive landslides. The Neeland Geyser, nicknamed the Slow One, is a mud pot in Southern California that actually moves a lot. It sits near the San Andreas Fault and has been creeping across the ground since around 2015, eating into roads, railways, and pipelines as it goes. At first it moved about 20 feet a year, then by 2020 it was creeping 10 feet a month. People have tried everything to stop it. Engineers drilled wells to let off pressure, and they built steel walls, pumped out thousands of gallons of muddy water, and dumped rocks into the basin, but the geyser just pushes right through. In 2018 it broke through a steel wall, forming a huge sinkhole, swallowing the rocks they dumped in. It even ran into the Union Pacific Railroad, forcing crews to build temporary tracks. State Route 111 has also been in the geyser's way. Over $20 million was spent building temporary roads, drainage systems, and steel barriers to divert the mud and water. Pipelines and fiber optic lines nearby have had to be moved as well. But the Slow One just keeps inching along, slowly eating away at whatever is in its path. Back in the 60s, a geologist named Jack Oliver picked up something strange on his instruments. It was a steady pulse coming from Earth every 26 seconds. It wasn't an earthquake. It was a perfectly consistent beat. More than 60 years later, scientists still don't fully know what's causing it. They've narrowed it down to one location though, a spot in the Gulf of Guinea, off the coast of Africa, but they still don't know what's causing it. One theory is that it's the ocean. The continental shelf in that area acts kind of like a giant drum, and when waves crash against it in just the right way, it could set off a repeating vibration. But not everyone is convinced the ocean is to blame here. There's a volcano on an island right near where the pulse comes from, and some researchers think, well, that's more likely the culprit. Tiny volcanic tremors happen in other parts of the world, like Japan, so it's not impossible that this one is volcanic too. Even with all our advanced technology though, the mystery hasn't been fully solved. Seismologists admit they tend to focus on bigger, more dangerous quakes over, weird little heartbeats in the earth, and fair enough, but for some reason, every 26 seconds, like clockwork, it's still there thumping away under the ocean. Over the South Atlantic Ocean, there's a weird spot in Earth's magnetic field called the South Atlantic Anomaly, or SAA, and it's getting bigger. Basically, the magnetic field there is weaker than usual, which lets more cosmic radiation sneak down toward the planet. And that might not sound all that scary, but satellites and spacecraft flying through the area can get zapped. It can cause electronics to glitch or just fail completely. Astronauts are at risk too if they're in the wrong place at the wrong time. The problem comes from Earth's core, where molten iron and nickel swirl around and generate our magnetic field. Sometimes those flows shift or slow down, and that can make weak spots like the SAA show up. One theory is that a huge chunk of rock under Africa is messing with the flow, creating this magnetic dent that's growing and moving. NASA's watching it closely because the anomaly is expanding and creeping toward other areas, and that means more satellites. In December of 2024, people in northern Vermont, upstate New York, and even Atlanta started spotting strange drone formations flying low over neighborhoods and back roads. These things had bright flashing lights, made almost no sound, and were flying in these coordinated patterns. What exactly were they? Where were they from? We still don't know. They don't look like your average hobby drones, though. Local police, the FAA, nor the military have taken responsibility. A drone expert named William Austin looked into it and apparently thinks most of these sightings were probably just people mistaking planes or regular drones for something more mysterious. But are you guys buying that? A lot of people are saying this could have been some sort of government testing, or obviously aliens. Since 2023, coral reefs around the world have been getting hit hard by unusually warm ocean weather. Scientists are calling it the biggest coral bleaching event ever recorded. About 84% of the world's reefs have been affected by this, from the Great Barrier Reef to the Caribbean. Coral bleaching happens when water gets too warm for too long. So the coral kicks out the algae, which gives it its color and food, so it's basically starving itself. If the water doesn't cool down soon enough, the coral dies. And since coral reefs support about 25% of all marine life, this isn't just bad for the ocean, it's a full-on crisis. What's making it worse is that this isn't just a freak event. It's happening because of long-term ocean warming from climate change, made even more intense by El Nino, a natural climate cycle that temporarily raises ocean temperatures around the world. So between long-term warming and this short-term boost, the reefs are taking a double hit. The heat just keeps building and the reefs can't recover fast enough. Entire ecosystems are at risk. Once they're gone, they don't come back easily, if at all. Hidden asteroids near Venus could be headed our way. It turns out Venus has a bunch of asteroids tagging along in its orbit, at least 20 of them. Scientists only recently found these things because they're usually lost in the glare of the sun, making them nearly impossible to spot from Earth. That's a problem because some of them have weird, unstable orbits that could eventually cross paths with us. One of them, called Zoospe, has already caught scientists' attention. It gets uncomfortably close to Earth from time to time, and if even one of these so-called city killer asteroids ever hits us, it would not be pretty. It'd cause serious damage. I mean, they're called city killers for a reason, right? So it sucks that we can't really track them that well, not only because the sun blocks our view, but because, tools we have can't really keep tabs on stuff in that part of the sky. That's why scientists are pushing for space-based observatories, satellites that could watch these things without being blinded by sunlight. Back in May of 2024, the sun let loose one of the biggest solar storms we've seen in decades. A surge of high-energy particles were fired straight towards the Earth. Normally, our planet's magnetic field handles this kind of thing, trapping most of that radiation inside the Van Allen belts, which are basically these two donut-shaped zones of charged particles wrapped around Earth. They kind of act as a force field, to put it as simply as I can, but this time a tiny NASA satellite called Elfin detected two brand new temporary radiation belts forming around Earth. One of them was filled with high-energy protons and was floating farther out than the usual belts. These new belts could have seriously messed with satellites and space equipment. They're like invisible minefields. A hit of that radiation can fry electronics. The good news is they eventually faded, but the fact that they appeared at all means that solar storms can temporarily reshape the environment around Earth. That's something we're gonna really need to consider for space travel and even people flying at high altitudes during these events. There's this glitch in Earth's magnetic field called the South Atlantic Anomaly. It's basically a weak spot in the planet's protective magnetic shield, and it floats over parts of South America and the South Atlantic Ocean. This thing isn't new, but over the past couple years, it's gotten bigger but weaker, and it started splitting into two separate zones. Scientists at NASA and ESA are keeping a close eye on it, but what's all the fuss about? Well, this magnetic field is what protects Earth from solar and cosmic radiation. When it thins out, more radiation makes it through. Satellites that pass over the anomaly get hit with extra particle bombardment, which has already caused data glitches and in some cases permanent damage. No one's exactly sure why it's happening, but one theory is that it has something to do with the movement of molten iron in Earth's outer core, the same stuff that creates the magnetic field in the first place. Some folks even wonder if it's a sign we're headed for a magnetic pole flip, which has happened before in Earth's history. So this is absolutely nuts. We've seen a lot of UAPs in the news so far this year, but this just takes things to a whole other level. So back in March in Buga, Colombia, this mysterious metal sphere about the size of a grapefruit was found sitting in a field. It weighed around 4.5 pounds and was made of multiple layers of metal with a tiny microchip buried in the center. I don't know why I'm saying was. It is. I mean, they have this sphere. These images of it are very real. Now, what got everyone talking though were the strange symbols on the surface of it. That and the fact that people said they saw the sphere zipping through the sky in the days leading up to it being found. So the symbols don't match any known language, but they look almost ancient or alien-like. Scientists and engineers examined the thing, and while it clearly wasn't just a chunk of scrap metal, nobody could agree on where it came from. So far, no one's claimed it. No factories nearby made anything like it, and it wasn't a leftover from any known satellite or drone. So what the hell is this thing? An alien probe? Some kind of lost technology? At this point, no one has any idea. In late 2024, scientists spotted something very strange. Earth had picked up a second moon. So a small asteroid about 10 meters wide was temporarily caught by our planet's gravity and orbited us for nearly 2 months before drifting away into space. The object, named 2024 PT5, is believed to actually contain material from the moon itself, meaning it could be a chunk that broke off during a past impact and ended up circling Earth. These kinds of temporary moons are extremely rare though, and most go completely unnoticed. On Christmas Day in 2024, in the small town of Kilcoman in Ireland, a father and son saw something very strange in the sky at around 6:09 p.m. They described seeing this group of star-like lights behaving in a way that stars definitely should not. One of the witnesses told the press, "I noticed one of what I believed to be stars in the sky moving all of a sudden. I pointed it out to my dad and we began observing it. Then it stopped, dead in its tracks. Maybe 5 seconds later, more of these stars began moving. It was here we realized these weren't stars." So in total, they saw 4 to 5 of these white lights. They moved at speeds faster than a commercial airplane, over 1,000 kilometers per hour, and made no sound at all. The witness also added, "The one that stopped then began moving once again, and I counted 4 while my dad counted 5 of these white lights moving quickly across the sky until they vanished into thin air one by one. This left us very confused and scared." So far, they haven't reported the sighting to authorities, but they're thinking about contacting a group that looks into unidentified aerial phenomena. In May of 2024, Earth got hit by a series of major solar storms, the strongest we've seen in decades. Between May 7th and 11th, the sun fired off several huge solar flares and at least 7 coronal mass ejections. These are massive bursts of charged particles, and they were headed straight for Earth at insane speeds, up to 3 million miles per hour. That sounds so crazy saying it out loud. Well, what happened was a G5 level geomagnetic storm. G5 is apparently the highest possible rating. It caused some pretty unusual effects, like the northern lights being visible as far south as Texas and parts of southern Europe. GPS systems were acting up too, and farmers in the Midwest actually had trouble with their high-tech tractors because of it. There's a strange spot in the Indian Ocean where the sea level is about 100 meters lower than it should be. And no, it's not because of a hole in the ocean. It's a gravity anomaly, meaning gravity is a bit weaker there, so water doesn't pile up like it does in other areas. This spot is called the Indian Ocean Geoid Low, and it's been confusing scientists for years. But now researchers think it's caused by chunks of old seafloor that sank deep into the Earth millions of years ago, combined with rising plumes of hotter, lighter rock. They've created a region with less mass under the surface, which means weaker gravity above it. It's a weird part of our planet. That's basically what I'm getting from this. In October of 2024, archaeologists diving near the ancient Greek site of Assini came across a long-lost sunken port. They found stone docks and the foundations of what used to be warehouses. The team was led by Dr. Maria Papadopoulou from the Hellenic Institute of Marine Archaeology, who said the, quote, "architectural features we've identified point to a highly organized port facility. Translation: this was a legit shipping hub, and that's important because it's changed what researchers thought about how advanced ports in this region were thousands of years ago. Using sonar and underwater excavation technology, the team mapped the whole area. They also found fragments of old clay jars and trade goods, basically the ancient Greek version of shipping containers. So this was a pretty busy trading port back in the day, but over time, it got swallowed up by the sea. For years, deep holes scattered across the ocean floor near Big Sur, California had scientists confused. They didn't seem to be caused by sea creatures, earthquakes, or people. They were just these strange, wide craters on the seabed. But in May of last year, researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, or MBARI, and Stanford May have finally solved the mystery. Turns out these holes are probably caused by methane gas slowly leaking up through the ocean floor. As that gas builds up underground, it creates pressure that eventually forces sediment out of the way, leaving behind these craters. They're called pockmarks, and while scientists have known about stuff like this in other places, this is the first time they've really pinned down how they form in this specific area. And these pockmarks could help researchers understand how methane escapes from the ocean floor into the water, possibly even the atmosphere. And that matters because methane is a powerful greenhouse gas. As ocean temperatures and underwater pressure changes, it's possible we'll see more of this kind of seepage. So while the mystery may be solved, it just opened up a whole new set of questions about what's happening in our oceans and what it could mean for the climate. As of April of 2025, scientists confirmed something pretty grim. About 84% of coral reefs around the world have been affected by a global bleaching event that started way back in 2023. It's now officially the fourth mass coral bleaching event ever recorded, and it's the most widespread one yet. So bleaching happens when ocean water gets too warm for too long. Corals respond by ejecting the tiny algae living inside them. That algae is what gives them their color and most of their energy. Without them, the coral turns white. If the water doesn't cool off fast enough, those corals will then just die. Reefs in the Caribbean, the Pacific, the Red Sea, and parts of Florida are getting hit with this, and when coral suffers, everything around it does too. These reefs are home to thousands of creatures. They're like underwater cities. They provide food, shelter, protection from storms, and according to the NOAA, which is the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, temperatures reached record highs in many reef areas in 2024. In May of last year, a massive solar flare slammed into Earth's magnetic field, and the effects weren't just felt up in space or around the poles. For the first time, researchers recorded distortions all the way down on the ocean floor. Ocean Networks Canada, which monitors the sea floor, picked up some strange behavior in their magnetic compasses. During the solar flare, those readings spiked, showing that the burst of energy from the sun was powerful enough to ripple through the planet's magnetic shield and leave a mark on instruments thousands of meters underwater. This is a big deal, because while we've known for a long time that solar storms can disrupt satellites, GPS systems, and power grids on land, we haven't really seen their impact beneath the ocean. So how will strong storms in the future affect deep-sea technology, undersea cables, or marine life that may rely on magnetic fields to navigate? In 2024, a team from NOAA and the Schmidt Ocean Institute discovered something incredible deep in the Atlantic Ocean, a brand new hydrothermal vent field along the mid-Atlantic range. These vents, sometimes called the black smokers, spew superheated mineral-rich water from under the Earth's crust. That might not sound like much, but they're a huge deal. These environments are extreme, pitch black, scalding hot, and yet all these strange life forms live in them. Of course, they don't rely on sunlight. Instead, they use chemicals from the vents to survive, making them some of the weirdest ecosystems on the planet. So now we have a brand new hydrothermal vent to explore, which will help scientists piece together more about how life might exist in other extreme environments, even ones not on Earth. So there you go. Even in 2025, we're still finding alien-like worlds right here on our home planet. In April of 2024, scientists went on a 40-day deep-sea expedition along the Salas y Gomez Ridge near Easter Island. What they found was incredible. Glowing dragonfish, bright red sea toads, something called a squat lobster, and weird noodle-like creatures called a galaxy siphonophore. That might be the longest animal on Earth. The expedition was led by the Schmidt Ocean Institute aboard their ship, the Falkor II. They explored underwater mountain peaks, and every seamount had its own unique ecosystem. Dr. Aaron Easton, who led the trip, said, "We're still astounded by what we observed. The observation of distinct ecosystems on individual seamounts highlights the importance of protecting the entire ridge, not just a few seamounts." End quote. They also found a coral that does photosynthesis at almost 200 meters deep, which is nuts, and discovered coral algae 350 meters below the surface. Altogether, they found more than 160 species, with at least 50 of them being totally new to science. Basically, it's proof that there's still a ton of wild stuff out there in the ocean we haven't found yet, and if we don't protect it, we might lose it before we even know it exists. Scientists from ETH Zurich and Caltech found something weird deep in the Pacific Ocean. They were using earthquake data to look inside the Earth, kind of like doing a giant X-ray. And they noticed some odd patches way down in the mantle, which is the super hot layer below the Earth's crust. Normally, when a big earthquake hits, the waves travel through the Earth in a certain way. But in these areas, the waves slowed down or bounced around strangely. That usually means there's something different going on down there, like a chunk of rock that's colder, denser, or made of something else entirely. What's really odd is where they found these patches. They're in places where we shouldn't see old pieces of the Earth's crust, since nothing's been pulled under the surface there recently. That breaks the usual rules of how plate tectonics work. Some scientists are now wondering if these might be leftovers from an ancient piece of the Earth's surface that got buried a long time ago, maybe even a lost world from a time we don't fully understand. Researchers exploring the wreck of the USS Yorktown, a United States Navy aircraft carrier that sank in 1942, got a surprise. So while scanning the ship with underwater robots, they spotted an old car sitting inside the hangar deck. It's a Ford station wagon from around 1940 or 1941. They think it might have been used by high-ranking officers when the ship was docked, basically as a ride to get around town. But the strange part is, when the ship was damaged in battle, the crew dumped, a bunch of heavy stuff, planes, weapons, whatever they could to keep it from sinking, really. So why was the car still on board? It's heavy. It could have been tossed like everything else, but for some reason it wasn't. Even weirder, the ship had just made a quick stop at Pearl Harbor for repairs before heading into battle. Why not take the car off then? In late 2024, a team of Spanish archaeologists pulled off something pretty incredible. They salvaged a 2,600-year-old Phoenician shipwreck from the bottom of the sea near Mauritia. This wreck, called Mazaron II, was first found back in 1994, but now they've finally brought it up piece by piece. This is one of the best preserved Phoenician ships ever discovered. Carlos de Juan, the man in charge of the excavation, said, "We are facing a wreck of the Phoenician era that practically preserves its naval architecture with all the carpentry." End quote. That is pretty rare. He also pointed out that some parts of the ship look like designs from the Levant, the eastern Mediterranean region that includes modern-day Lebanon, Syria, and Israel, where the Phoenicians originally come from, but other parts of it are totally unique. To get the wreck out safely, divers spent 2 months carefully taking it apart in 22 sections. The whole ship is around 8 meters long, basically the size of a U-Haul. Imagine you're tearing up an old fish market in Barcelona for a new building when suddenly you hit a medieval shipwreck buried about 16 feet underground. We've all had that dream before, right? Well, earlier this month, archaeologists found a surprisingly well-preserved ship from the 14 or 1500s, and it's telling us a lot about how people back then got around by sea. The ship, nicknamed Quintadilla 1, is about 10 meters long and 3 meters wide, or 32.8 feet long and 9.8 feet wide. It's packed with curved wooden ribs, over 30 of them. This was a seriously solid build. Santiago Palacios Naito, who's running the dig, said the ship has both Mediterranean and Atlantic design styles. He thinks it may have been built in the Basque Country or Galicia, two coastal areas in northern Spain that were really good at building ships. Then it ended up sailing out of Barcelona, which was a huge port back in the day. The wood is in great shape as well, because it was buried in wet soil that's almost more like clay, so it kept air out and stopped it from rotting. They're keeping the ship damp while they prep it to be studied, and along with the ship, they found pottery and tools nearby, which could tell us who was using it and what kind of trade was going on.
While exploring Mars, the Opportunity rover stumbled upon something unexpected: small spherical concretions, affectionately dubbed blueberries. Composed mainly of hematite, these tiny spheres are not only visually striking, but also scientifically significant. Their formation suggests that liquid water once circulated in the region, precipitating the minerals that eventually coalesced into these perfect little balls. What makes the blueberries so fascinating is the precision of their formation process, which remains partly shrouded in mystery. Were they slowly formed in standing water, or did they result from more dynamic, possibly even episodic, chemical reactions? Their discovery has been a key piece of evidence in the ongoing quest to understand the red planet's climactic evolution, making these small spheres a disproportionately big enigma in Martian geology. Venture near the Martian South Pole and you'll encounter a landscape that looks like it's been etched by alien creatures. Radial channels and patterns resembling spider legs, collectively known as areniform terrain. These formations arise from the sublimation of carbon dioxide ice during the spring. As the frozen CO2 turns directly into gas, it builds pressure beneath a translucent ice layer until it erupts, carving out intricate branching channels in the process. This dynamic process, unique to Mars, offers a captivating glimpse into the planet's seasonal rhythms. The exact mechanics and variability of these spider formations are still under study, making them one of Mars' most visually arresting and scientifically puzzling phenomena. Their alien appearance and the dramatic natural forces that shape them capture the imagination, challenging our perceptions of what a cold, desolate world can be capable of. When we think of earthquakes, we usually picture the trembling ground on our home planet, but Mars, too, experiences its own kind of seismic activity. Marsquakes. Detected by NASA's InSight lander, these tremors provide a rare window into the interior of the red planet. Marsquakes are less frequent and generally less intense than earthquakes here on Earth, but they pack a significant scientific punch. They help researchers map the Martian interior, revealing details about the planet's crust, mantle, and core. However, the origin of many of these quakes remains elusive. Some might be the result of cooling and contraction of the planet, while others could be linked to volcanic or tectonic activity that we have yet to fully understand. The intermittent nature of these seismic events keeps scientists on their toes, as each new quake adds a piece to the puzzle of Mars' inner workings. In essence, Marsquakes not only shake the surface, they shake up our understanding of the planet's geological past and present. Methane on Earth is often associated with life, and for years, scientists have been intrigued by sporadic methane spikes detected in the Martian atmosphere. These bursts of methane are particularly puzzling because methane is a short-lived gas. Without a constant source, it should quickly break down in Mars' harsh environment. So, where does it come from? Some theories suggest geological processes such as serpentinization, a reaction between certain rock types and water, that could be releasing methane. Others have speculated, albeit more controversially, about the possibility of microbial life. The intermittent nature of these methane spikes makes them one of the most tantalizing and debated anomalies on Mars. Ongoing studies using both orbital and surface instruments aim to pinpoint the source of these emissions, but for now, the methane mystery remains one of Mars' most intriguing and potentially groundbreaking mysteries. Stretching over 4,000 kilometers across the Martian surface, Valles Marineris is one of the largest canyons in the solar system, a geological marvel that dwarfs even Earth's Grand Canyon. But beyond its sheer size, this vast chasm holds layered sedimentary deposits that tell a story of a planet in flux. Each layer could represent a different different era in Mars history, from ancient periods when water might have flowed freely to more volatile times marked by volcanic or tectonic upheavals. Some layers reveal irregular patterns that challenge conventional models of sediment deposition, hinting at episodic floods, dramatic climate shifts, or even volcanic ashfalls. These deposits are not only visually striking, they are the keys to unlocking Mars' past environment and assessing its potential for having supported life. As scientists continue to analyze data from orbiters and rovers, this place remains a focal point of research, its mysterious layers urging us to reconsider the dynamic and sometimes unpredictable history of our mysterious red neighbor. In the late 1970s, images taken by the Viking orbiter revealed a curious formation in the Cydonia region that appeared to resemble a human face. This face on Mars has ignited imaginations around the world, with some speculating about ancient Martian civilizations or hidden messages left by extraterrestrials. But is it really a face, or just a trick of light and shadow on a rugged landscape? Later missions, including high-resolution imagery from Mars Global Surveyor, have shown that this face is simply a natural mesa, a hill sculpted by wind and erosion. Despite the overwhelming evidence that it is a geological feature, the mystery still lingers. The enduring allure lies in how our brains are wired to recognize faces even where none exist, a phenomenon called pareidolia. Imagine watching mysterious, dark lines appear on a slope with the change of seasons, lines that might hint at the presence of liquid water. These features, known as reoccurring slope lineae, were first noticed in high-resolution images from orbiting spacecraft. Initially, scientists were excited by the possibility that briny water might be trickling down Martian hillsides during the warmer months, potentially offering clues about Mars' habitability. However, as more data poured in, alternative explanations emerged. Some researchers now believe that these streaks could be dry, granular flows, movements of sand and dust driven by seasonal temperature changes rather than water. Yet, the debate is far from over. The fine details of the RSL's behavior continue to puzzle experts, keeping alive the tantalizing possibility that Mars might harbor conditions favorable for life, at least in its past, if not today. If you've ever seen a dust devil on Earth, you know that they can be both mesmerizing and unpredictable. On Mars, these phenomena take on an even more epic scale. Towering dust devils, sometimes spanning hundreds of meters in diameter, have been captured by rovers like Spirit and Opportunity. They not only whisk Martian dust around, but they also play a crucial role in cleaning the solar panels of these robotic explorers, an essential survival trick on a planet where every watt counts. Moreover, Martian dust devils can generate powerful vortices that expose hidden layers of rock and dust, revealing the planet's geological history in unexpected ways. Their mysterious origins and immense scale continue to intrigue researchers who wonder how such dynamics operate in Mars' thin atmosphere. These swirling storms offer a vivid reminder that even on a seemingly barren world, natural forces are at work in dramatic, sometimes unpredictable ways. Take a look at a map of Mars and you'll notice a startling contrast. The northern hemisphere is relatively smooth and low-lying, while the southern hemisphere is rugged, heavily cratered, and ancient. This phenomenon, known as hemispherical dichotomy, has left scientists scratching their heads for decades. Why would a planet have such a stark division in its terrain? One prevailing theory suggests that a colossal impact in Mars' distant past could have reworked half of its crust, while another hypothesis points to differences in volcanic activity and mantle dynamics between the two halves. What makes this anomaly so captivating is not only the dramatic visual difference, but also what it implies about Mars' geological evolution. The dichotomy holds clues to the planet's internal processes, its volcanic history, and even its potential to have supported life. As researchers continue to piece together Mars' tumultuous past, this enduring mystery remains one of the planet's most debated and fascinating features. Today, Mars is largely magnetically inert, a stark contrast to Earth's vibrant, protective magnetic field. Yet, scattered across its surface are regions with intense magnetic anomalies, remnants of a time when Mars might have boasted a global global magnetic field. These pockets of magnetism, preserved in the crust, offer a glimpse into a bygone era when Mars may have shielded its surface from harmful cosmic radiation. What makes these magnetic stripes so perplexing is their irregular distribution and strength. Unlike Earth, where magnetic reversals have left clear, symmetrical patterns in the ocean floors, Mars' magnetized regions seem patchy and kind of disjointed. This discrepancy has spurred a host of theories, from a giant impact event that disrupted its magnetic field to internal cooling processes that shut down its dynamo. Each hypothesis adds another layer to the mystery of Mars' evolution, leaving us to wonder how a planet once brimming with magnetic energy could become so mysteriously dormant. What if an island emerges from mist once every 7 years only to vanish again, leaving sailors questioning their sanity? High Brazil is the legendary Phantom Island off the west coast of Ireland, appearing in maps from 1325 through the 1800s. The legends described it as a perfect circular island, sometimes with a river running through it. It was said to be shrouded in mist except one day every 7 years when its outline would reveal itself. Sailors claimed to see it, then attempted to approach, but as they got closer, it would disappear. It's not just myth either. It's made its way onto many nautical charts for centuries. Some say it might have been optical illusions, mirages, perhaps floating fog or distant cloud banks. But for early explorers navigating by compass and stars, seeing something land-like ahead only to get nothing when you approach, that kind of uncertainty breeds fear. Imagine approaching shore only to find the sea has turned blood red. That's what sailors and coastal villagers experienced during massive red tide events throughout history. Red tides are caused by algal blooms that release deadly toxins. In 1947, one of the worst red tides hit Florida, killing massive numbers of fish and causing respiratory distress in humans. Early explorers had no scientific explanation for why the ocean would suddenly turn scarlet and wipe out sea life overnight. Some described it as a biblical plague. The sight of the sea stained red and littered with dead fish was enough to terrify entire crews. Even today, red tides can poison seafood and cause economic disasters, proving these eerie anomalies are still a very real threat. On January 26, 1700, a massive tsunami slammed into the coast of Japan. Entire villages were destroyed, but the strangest part? There had been no earthquake in Japan to trigger it. Japanese records called it the orphan tsunami. For centuries, the cause remained a mystery. It wasn't until modern researchers studied tree rings and Native American oral histories in the Pacific Northwest that the answer was found. A massive magnitude 9 earthquake had struck the Cascadia subduction zone off North America's coast, sending a tsunami racing across the Pacific. Sailors dreaded crossing the waters between South America and Antarctica, and for good reason. The Drake Passage is home to some of the most violent seas on Earth. Explorers described waves not just rising up, but coming at them from multiple directions at once, creating an effect like upside-down walls of water. Ships were tossed like toys, and many never made it through. Charles Darwin himself nearly turned back when passing through on the HMS Beagle in 1833, noting how chaotic and terrifying the waters were. Even with modern ships, the Drake Passage remains a nightmare. For explorers centuries ago, the unpredictable mountainous waves seemed supernatural, as if the sea itself was trying to swallow them whole. Picture a glowing ship ablaze on the horizon, but when you sail towards it, it vanishes. Its screams fade in the wind. In an area between New Brunswick and Quebec in Canada, there is a phenomenon known as the fire ship, or the phantom ship. People report seeing an arc of light, like a flaming 3-mast ship, often during or before storms. They sometimes hear it described as though the burning ship has passengers whose cries are faintly audible in the wind or through water. Local legends are strong. In one version, the ship belonged to a captain involved in the slave trade who was killed and the ship cursed to burn forever. In scientific investigations, some claim it's natural gas or rotting vegetation releasing gases, or St. Elmo's fire, a form of plasma discharge in storms. For explorers or sailors who saw that light at dusk, heading toward it, hoping rescue or safe harbor, or just trying to understand what they saw, only to feel something supernatural or malevolent. It left deep fear in the hearts of many, because what looks like a real ship might not be, and what you think is real might be just a trick of nature.